much. We really didn't plan on a live presentation on resiliency, but that might be what you get depending on technology here this evening. Thank you, Mr. Ball. We really do have appreciated your leadership through these very challenging times that we are in. I'm just glad that we have him as our leader, because he's been amazing. We're super excited to have Stephanie Sang with us this evening. Stephanie and I were doing a technology test earlier this afternoon and found out that we have a personal connection because we don't know each other before this day. So that was kind of fun. Stephanie brings some great credentials to the evening, and so I'm going to go ahead and give you her introduction. She is the director of the Center for Couple and Family Therapy at Colorado State University, where she supervises student therapists in a community-based therapy setting. Within that role, she founded and serves as the director of the CSU Child Trauma and Resilience Assessment Center. At the center, she leads a team of professionals and students who, based on a systemic two-generation trauma-informed model, she provides extensive assessments and recommendations for children and families who have experienced complex trauma. The team also trains organizations and agencies across the state in a trauma-informed care and practices. Stephanie, thank you again for donating both your time and your expertise, and we're anxious to hear what you have to share with us this evening.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I met your counseling staff a little bit earlier, like Jill said, in a technology test, and I have to say how impressed I am. I met Laura, Jill, and Cindy, and it was just really clear to me how much they care about all of you, the kids and families. And then to hear making a phone call to every single family, that's quite an undertaking. So it seems to me that you are in good hands. So like I said, I'm really glad to be here. I'm coming to you from my bedroom, and I did make my bed. My husband and kids have been instructed to stay out, but just a heads up, if the FedEx person comes to the door, or if a squirrel decides to navigate the back fence in the backyard, all bets are off, because our COVID puppy will become a part of this presentation. I thought about using one of those false backgrounds for this, but have you ever noticed that when you use those, that it seems as though you have an invisibility cloak every time you move, different parts of you disappear? And the truth is, this is our reality. And so I wanted to be real with you today. I wish we could all be together at the high school talking in person. That's so much easier, but we aren't. And I want to be real about that. I'm in my bedroom, and I'm guessing a lot of you probably are in your bedrooms too. So like Jill said in the introduction, I'm the director of 2 therapy and assessment centers at Colorado State University. And just to give you a little bit of history, back in 2014, in a collaboration with Larimer County DHS, I had the opportunity to observe Dr. Jim Henry, who is a specialist in trauma-informed care, as he was conducting a trauma assessment with a teenager. And the teen was living with his aunt, I think. I think his dad was in prison and his mom was in rehab. And he was on radar for an assessment because he had trouble getting himself to school and had recently been picked up for shoplifting. When he arrived, he was in a hoodie and he had it pulled up over his head and his shoulders were slumped, and he clearly had no intention of talking to anyone. And yet that day, what I observed was magic. As he worked through the assessment with Dr. Henry, by the time he got to the end, he was sitting on the floor next to Dr. Henry, and he was thanking him for the experience. He was explaining how this was the first time in his life anyone had ever really gotten him. So I was sold. I was convinced that we needed to bring this kind of magic to CSU, to train our students who are going to be therapists in the community, how to hold people's stories in this way and how to be there for families in this really incredible way. So we collaborated with Larimer County DHS and 6 other counties across the state of Colorado to develop a model to assess for trauma and make recommendations for healing. And from that, we created the Child Trauma and Resilience Assessment Center, which we call CTRAC because it's a little easier to say. Since its inception, over 600 families have taught us about their experiences. They've taught us about trauma and they've taught us about resilience. And so today, my goal is to share with you a little bit about what those families have taught us that could be helpful as we navigate the challenges that we're facing in this really, really crazy year. I also wanted to tell you that in addition to my work at CSU, I'm a mom, and I have 3 adult children who graduated from Poudre High School in Fort Collins. And 2 of those kids and 1 girlfriend are currently living with us at home because of the pandemic. Pandemic, who'd have thought, right? As a mom, I can worry with the best of them, and I do. But I'll tell you, a year ago, so we're wrapping up Thanksgiving and we're getting ready at the end of the semester. A pandemic wasn't on my radar. That wasn't something I was worrying about. It's been a really hard year. I don't have to tell you that. Dr. Fauci told us, all the stars are aligned. You couldn't possibly be positioned more poorly. I do get a kick out of the jokes and humor around the pandemic, though. I just got an email today that said, so you're staying inside, practicing social distancing, and cleaning yourself? Congratulations, you've become a house cat. The pandemic has affected every one of us, every parent, child, family, in really different ways. And while we might not actually get to be a house cat, there have been positive impacts and obviously negative ones. Funny memes, more family time for some people, the busyness slowing down for some people, but also a lot of loss. At CTRAC, we were really worried about what was going to happen because when the pandemic came, we had to move all of our services online. And as therapists, we really value that face-to-face contact. But we really had no choice. And what has happened is interesting because while it's not ideal for every kid, we've actually found out that it's pretty good. We are able to connect with so many teens that we may not have been able to connect with otherwise. They have a comfort level with technology that has taken me a while to get to. And they don't have to travel. They don't have to show up and be in a waiting room with other people. So again, like I said, while it's not ideal for everyone, it has been a lot of good learning for us. And I imagine we'll continue to do this well beyond the pandemic in this way. So my specialty is trauma. And so I kind of ask the question, is what we're dealing with through the pandemic trauma? According to the NCTSN, which is the Child Traumatic Stress Network, when someone feels intensely threatened by an event that they are involved in or witness, we call that trauma. So trauma can be acute, which means, a single distressful event. It can be chronic, meaning repeated and ongoing. And it can be complex, exposure to multiple events. Trauma can also be physical. So that would be like being in a car accident or experiencing COVID. It could be emotional, the result of abuse or neglect, or grief, right? Grief over the death of a loved one or the loss of something really important to you. And trauma can be vicarious or secondary, so meaning the result of hearing about others' traumatic experiences. So I heard today that the number of COVID deaths yesterday was equivalent to 19 jets crashing. This is unlike anything we've ever experienced before. So whether we've suffered physical or emotional or vicarious effects, I believe to one degree or another, we're all experiencing some kind of trauma. And call it trauma or call it difficulties or challenges, we're all caregivers here. And we all love our kids. We want what's best for them. So how can you not worry about the impact of all of this on them? So traumatic experiences as a child can have long-term effects. Some of you maybe have heard about ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. There was a study that was done by Kaiser and the CDC where they looked at 10 ACEs and examined the impact of those ACEs. And what they learned is that ACEs are actually really common. 2/3 of the participants in the study had experienced at least one ACE, and 1 in 8 had experienced 4 or more. The ACEs that they looked at were different kinds of abuse, mental illness in the family, having a family member incarcerated, witnessing domestic violence, and parental divorce. There are other childhood traumatic experiences, but those were the ones that they studied. They also learned that the more ACEs that someone has, the higher likelihood that that person will have long-term health problems like heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, things like that. So we know that complex trauma as a child can affect brain development and functioning. But there is good news here. Young brains have a great deal of plasticity. And with the right support, they can rewire and recover from trauma. So what mitigates the negative impacts of trauma? What helps rewire the brain? This is my favorite part. The most inspiring thing about my job are the things that families teach me about resilience. Okay, resilience helps rewire the brain. Resilience helps us recover from traumatic experiences. Kids are resilient, right? They'll be fine. Have you ever heard that? Or maybe said it yourself. I have. The NCTSN defines resilience as the ability to recover from a potentially traumatic event. So you might think about it as the ability to bounce back from something. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child has a quick 2-minute video that explains resilience well. And so I think Laura is going to try to play that for you, and we'll see if we can make technology work.
Yes. All right, everybody, give me just a second.
Thanks, Laura. We can see it.
Okay.
Resilience is the result of a highly interactive process between individual characteristics of the person and the environment in which that individual has developed.
It's really the counterbalancing of difficult things that may exist in a child's life with positive things that occur within the family, but even positive things that may exist in the community.
Easy way of thinking about resilience.
So everybody, I'm going to turn the volume up just a little bit.
Is like a scale with a fulcrum in the middle of it, and there are things on both sides of that scale, experiences of both bad things or good things.
Our genes shape where the fulcrum is positioned at the start.
There are certain genes that make a child more sensitive to the effects of maltreatment or parental neglect or witnessing violence.
The fulcrum may start out kind of more towards one side or more towards the other side, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of how much these subsequent events affect things positively or negatively.
Science tells us that experience moves the fulcrum, for better or for worse.
Even though we are born with genes, genes will respond differently to certain environmental situations as opposed to others.
What the genes are actually doing are turning up or turning down the expression of chemicals in circuits in the brain and the circuitry in the entire body that govern our responses to stress, to anxiety, to depressive symptoms.
When positive experiences accumulate, and children learn coping skills that help them to manage stress. The fulcrum can slide, so the scale tilts toward positive outcomes more easily. That's what resilience is all about.
There's always an adult, or more than one adult, who is key to providing that relationship that helps to build resilience.
Okay, everybody still hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Okay, so resilience is interesting because resilience helps you through hard times, but you can't develop resilience unless you've experienced hard times. So Dr. Brock Bastian calls this the resilience paradox, that resilience is developed through discomfort, and having resilience helps us navigate the inevitable challenges throughout life. So in that way, even though we would never wish for it and we aren't loving it right now, when we look back, the pandemic could end up being one of the best things that's happened to a kid. My career in trauma-informed practice began when I worked as a counselor at an outpatient clinic that treated neurological illnesses and injuries. It was really hard work. I worked with families whose lives had suddenly been disrupted and torn apart by brain injuries or serious illness. And yet, it was really amazingly rewarding work as well. Time and again, these families who had every reason to be so angry or to just give up just proved resilience over and over and over again. They dug in and they were determined to make something good come from the tragedy that they were experiencing. In sessions, we would often talk about this paradox of resilience. For these clients, it showed up a lot of times simultaneously feeling angry and sad and overwhelmed and resentful even about what happened to them, and at the same time grateful for all they had, for loved ones, for second chances. I remember one teen, her car had been T-boned as she entered a really busy highway, and she was very seriously injured. The language centers in her brain had been injured, so she had to use an alphabet board to speak, and she was in a wheelchair. I think she was 16 at the time. She came to my office from the waiting room where she'd been sitting and visiting with some other patients, and she asked me if it was wrong for her to feel grateful. She said that in the waiting room, instead of feeling bad that she couldn't talk, she found herself feeling lucky that she wasn't as bad off as some of the other people in the waiting room. She could still communicate, and she could play the piano, and she was learning to walk again. Difficult experiences can teach us to hold different emotions at the same time, to acknowledge the losses we've experienced while still being grateful for all the good things, and to inspire grit to make something good from hardships. So if we go back to the Harvard video, they talked about how our genes affect where the resilience fulcrum starts, but that we have the power to adjust the balance. And so we can adjust the balance by unloading the negative side, reducing sources of stress. We can load up the positive side by increasing positive experiences. And we can also move the fulcrum by strengthening core life skills, which we can refer to as executive functioning. So with our kids and teens in the center, one of the tools we use is an activity called flipping your lid. And what we do, I'll see if I can do this where you can see it, but if you think of your hand as a brain, and if you look at your hand, and here is the survival brain, here is the emotional brain, your thumb is the amygdala, and then your fingers, as they fold over, are the thinking brain, the executive functioning. And so we talk to our kids and families about how when we're under stress or when we're triggered, we might flip our lids. And all of a sudden, our thinking brain isn't on tight and we're not very rational. And our amygdala or our smoke alarm is taking over. Our survival brain is taking over. And by using a tool like this, families can normalize that we all flip our lids. I do. I, unfortunately, on a regular basis, can flip my lid. Our kids do. And so if we can talk to them in a way that normalizes that, and then also helps give them the tools to fold that thinking brain back down, to give them the power to sort of control that survival brain through all kinds of strategies like deep breathing, going for walks, taking a time out. Research shows that kids who are resilient have the ability to manage strong feelings and impulses, a positive view of oneself, capacity to make and enact plans, skills in communicating and problem solving, and, as they said in the video, at least one quality adult relationship. Our opportunity is really in that last one. Resilient kids always have at least one positive adult relationship to build on. So, as the parent of a teen, some of you may know that they understand that you love them and they appreciate all that you do for them. But if you're like me, there are probably lots of times where you kind of wonder if they appreciate you at all, right? Those teenage years can be challenging with relationships. But what I can tell you from the work that we've done at C-TRAC is that kids get it. Kids value parents and family and caregivers, even when there's stress in that relationship. When we are doing our trauma assessments, at the end of every assessment, we always ask kids if they could have 3 wishes, any wish in the world, what would they be? And it's really surprising, just almost every time it's not what you would expect. They don't ask for a new iPhone or a new car or even $1 million. Sometimes they do ask for more wishes, but we have to tell them that's against the rules. It's always about relationships. I wish that my mom could be happy. I wish that my dad could come home. Or if they do wish for things, it's for other people. I wish that my mom could have a new house. I wish that my little brother could have a new bike. The hope and the opportunity is in the relationships, being that important person in a child's life. Dr. Bastian, who I mentioned earlier, suggests 3 things that can help your kids develop resilience. Focus on influence rather than control. There are a lot of things that we don't have control over, but we can control how we think about things and therefore the influence that we might be able to have over them. Focus on gains rather than losses. When we fail at something, it isn't only a loss. We gain insight, we gain learning, we gain growth, and build confidence through managing difficult experiences. Build those executive functioning skills. I would add to that list co-regulation. So co-regulation is we as adults modeling emotion management. So when I said, I flip my lid, how many times, particularly with teenagers, do we get in situations where they flip their lid and we're right there with them, and then there's conflict? If we can co-regulate, if we can manage our emotion and stay calm in the midst of stress, we can model that and help our teens also calm and be able to pull back into that executive functioning. The other thing I would add is listening. It might seem obvious, but it's such a key factor in helping kids develop resilience. I think it's one of the most important things that our C-TRAC kids have taught us, that a lot of adults, including parents, assume we know what's going on for kids. We assume we know what they need. So during our assessments, the first question we ask in every assessment to a kid is, who's the expert on you? And we get all kinds of answers. My best friend, my dog. We almost always hear mom or dad or someone like that. But eventually they get to what we think is the right answer, which is they are. Kids are the experts on themselves. So at C-Track, we ask them to teach us about what they need. Excuse me, what they need. I remember there was a boy who was in his early teens who had suffered some abuse. I think his dad was alcoholic, and he really tried hard in school, but he would explode in anger when he was triggered or when something went wrong. And we all made assumptions about why he was struggling. During the assessment, the clinician reflected with him, wow, you've been through some pretty hard things. The boy paused, thought for a while, and he said, yeah, but you know what's really hard? Puberty is hard. My voice squeaks and I've got hair everywhere. It was really sweet, and we were wrong about what we thought was going on for him. Another teen who had experienced complex trauma shared with us that he'd had a lot of difficult experiences in his childhood, but that he felt like he could manage those problems just fine. He was doing okay with that. The reason he hated school is that he was being bullied at recess by a group of boys, but nobody knew about it. So it's amazing what you can find out from kids when you listen. We need to trust our kids to be the experts on themselves, and what we think might be happening for them might not be. In the case of the pandemic, is the impact of a particular loss theirs, which it might be, or is it ours, or the assumptions that we're making? So, as a quality relationship in kids' lives, you have a lot of power to help them build resilience. And sometimes we need help. It's not only okay, but it's really important to ask for help. There are a lot of resources out there dealing with trauma, and more all the time about navigating the challenges of the pandemic. You are more than welcome to reach out to us at Colorado State University for any sorts of resources or help around managing the challenges of schooling at home and being socially isolated and some of those kinds of challenges that we're facing. I also know that you have a counseling staff at your school who really is committed to supporting you, and I really encourage you, and I know they will too, to reach out to them. Also, don't forget about self-care. It's a heavy lift to ask caregivers to manage with kids through this, and you really do have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Audre Lorde, who's a civil rights activist, said, I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And that's really true. So are kids resilient? Absolutely, 100% yes. I could cite example after example of teens that we've worked with at C-Track who have thrived in the face of overwhelming challenges. The boy who vowed to be the first male in his family not to join a gang. The girl who navigated public transportation to get from her foster home in Longmont to her job in Fort Collins because she was determined to go to college. The teen who made lunches and drove his siblings to school every morning because his dad had died and his mom worked nights, and he was sharing how proud he was to be able to support his mom. A pandemic. Who could have imagined? So many lives lost, so many experiences lost, and yet I reflect on a teen that we saw recently who was a history buff. He was talking about the pandemic, and he shared that he got hope in thinking about previous generations who had survived tragedies. He talked about the Spanish flu pandemic during a world war, and he talked about how a generation of people who lived through World War II are now considered the greatest generation. I thought it was such an interesting perspective on resilience that I did a little bit of research when I was getting ready for this talk. A man named Dr. Glenn Schiraldi from the University of Maryland is an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder. And he wrote a book called World War II Survivors, Lessons in Resilience. For his book, he interviewed people who had lived through the Depression, were survivors of combat in World War II, and returned from the war well-adjusted. He asked these survivors about what helped them to cope. How had they gotten through the war psychologically intact? He was asked what advice could he offer based on these conversations that he had. He said, we might remember that even exceptionally resilient individuals struggled with fear and sadness, yet they pressed ahead despite their pain. This is a fine model. We acknowledge our pain kindly and without judging it. Then we press forward despite the suffering. If we have to function, as in emergencies, then we do so to the best of our abilities. And when things settle down, then we grieve so that we don't have to carry these sufferings inside forever. And when asked about the most important things that he thought he learned, he said, perhaps that people can endure incredible suffering, yet still remain soft and whole inside, hopeful, loving, and happy. So thank you for letting me share some of my thoughts this evening. I have so much respect for the challenges that kids and parents and caregivers are facing as we navigate through this pandemic. It is hard, and we will get through it, I believe, soft and whole inside, hopeful, loving, and happy. Thanks.
Stephanie, thank you so much. I wish that we had applause that we could give you, because I'm sure it would be a rousing round of applause. That was very touching, and the personal stories really are the ones that are so helpful. I really appreciated what you said about what you're learning from those that you work with, because that's exactly where I am. I've learned way more from my students on resilience and how to handle it. In my own life, I've learned from the students I've dealt with over the years. So I really appreciated hearing you say that and sharing some of those stories, and providing maybe a little bit of a reframe for all of us on these hard times on what that we're going through right now. So again, we greatly appreciate that. Was wonderful. And we're going to let you go eat dinner.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Okay. All right. Next, we're going to have Kathy Schlepp, who is our district wellness coordinator. We have previewed her slide deck, and she has lots of wonderful things to offer. So stay tuned. Kathy?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Jill, can you let me know if you can actually see my slides?
We can see your slides and we can hear you. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in tonight. I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about physical health and its impact on our mental state, a little bit more lighthearted and not so quite as serious as Stephanie's. And I took so much from that talk. So Stephanie, thank you so much for that. We know that with this new reality, we're experiencing increased screen time, likely a decrease in social experiences, decreased movement, and many other shifts in our day-to-day. So tonight I'll just be highlighting a few ideas and resources to support your physical health and your students' physical health. Likely nothing earth-shattering that you haven't heard before, but hopefully just some good reminders on how to help support our students as we go through this remote learning and back into, hopefully back into school, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But I think some of these tips are sometimes just good to kind of put back on the radar. So this model here is something you've likely seen before. Sometimes there's like a 5-dimension or an 8-dimension model of wellness, but really it's just more to say that there's lots of different components of wellness. Is not just one of these. We need to be kind of keeping tabs on all of them together. Tonight, I'm just going to be focusing on that physical wellness piece, knowing that others are kind of jumping in to cover some of those other ones. And there's so many great resources on those other ones, and happy to help out with that. If you need anything, you can always reach out to me via email or many of the others, I'm sure, on this phone call. So let's move on to the next one. So we know that there's absolutely a connection between how we feel physically and how that impacts our mental health. So I'm going to be jumping into a few of these that are on the screen tonight, and there's likely many others that we are not going to have a chance to cover. One of the big things that we saw in the survey that was sent out to students and staff was, we're all not having a chance to move as much as we wanted to. And I know that those of us who are on screens all day long too in meetings definitely feel that. So there's definitely some things that we can do about that during the school day, and it makes it a little bit trickier. But that's kind of what I wanted to highlight tonight. So outside the physical benefits of exercise, of endurance and muscular strength and those sorts of things, what are some of the additional benefits that we can look at as far as mentally from exercise? We know that there's an increase in endorphins, which definitely helps with concentration and mental clarity when we exercise. There's a growth of new brain cells. There's an easier processing of emotions, oftentimes increased self-esteem, improved memory, improved immune system, which is huge in these days, and then an improvement in sleep. And then on the flip side of that, we know that exercise also tends to decrease stress, brain fog, and anxiety. So for those kiddos who have those sorts of things, of just like, how can we help to get them moving a little bit more? So here's just some quick tips of what to do potentially for movement during the school day. Setting up a reminder to stand up and move every 30 minutes. As you can see, I'm swaying back and forth, so I'm at my stand-up desk. So if there's any way to get kids, even like a makeshift stand-up desk, or kind of getting them so that they can move around a little bit during their meetings, is really helpful. Actually putting movement into the calendar, and actually we know that when things are on our calendar or on a schedule, that it's more likely to get done. So actually planning it as part of the school day, maybe before the school day starts, or potentially at lunch before kiddos go and eat lunch. Turning on the music and dancing is always a great way to do this. And then there's a couple of other links that are on here. And I think that this presentation is actually going to be put on the website, so you guys will have a chance to get into those live links that are in there and check some of those out. That one that's at the right is that wheel of fitness. You can click on it and it spins around. Kids love it, and it just kind of pops up with an exercise. So those are some kind of fun different ways to get some movement in during the school day. The next thing that I wanted to jump into is just food and how that kind of impacts our mental health. There's actually a term for this. The study of what food does for mental health is called nutritional psychiatry. And it's actually something that's really in the preliminary stages. There's been a lot of different researching studies out there about looking at this. And there's not a ton of research as far as specific diets or things that are actually very helpful for mental health, but we do know that there's a few things that are kind of harmful for that. And we know that diets that are high in refined sugars are shown to increase inflammation and oxidative stress in the brain, which can definitely have some impact on impaired brain function. So a lot of times that brain fog or that difficulty concentrating, and then oftentimes a worsening of symptoms of depression and anxiety. And sometimes we'll feel like those things, even if we have like a big drink of Coke or whatever that happens to be, we'll feel jittery and whatever, and we'll notice that kind of in a short-term thing. But the studies have shown that diets that are kind of chronically filled with refined sugars are definitely harmful to the brain and can actually have that more chronic effect on depression and anxiety. So the studies do show a little bit of an impact of when fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and whole grains, kind of that Mediterranean diet, that's really what's been studied, has been helpful as far as boosting mental health. So one of the big things that I can not stress enough, and I see in my own kids, is just really increasing that intake of water. Sometimes when I'm working at home and I'll go out and see my kids while they're on their meetings, and they'll come out and like, I haven't had anything to drink, and it's 12 o'clock. So really increasing that water intake, having a big glass of water in the morning is awesome. Increasing omega-3s any way that you can. As far as that brain health, that's really important. So that salmon or some sort of fatty fish, and then walnuts, flax, chia seeds, whatever that can look like, maybe in smoothies or something like that. And then really the big thing is just increasing more whole foods, and then that kind of decreasing on the other side of things, that those sugars, artificial sweeteners, the caffeine, and those processed foods as much as possible. I know, teenagers, I have 3 of my own. So it's been interesting to kind of navigate this and actually seeing what they're eating during the day while I'm here. One of the big things that helps to increase those whole foods is really getting them in the kitchen and getting them cooking. I have 3 teenage girls, and they haven't been in the kitchen as much in these last 8 months as they have in their whole lives. So hopefully they're learning some good culinary skills and are picking up some of that along the way. So that's definitely a silver lining in all of this. And then the other thing I guess I would say is just embracing that mindful eating. So a lot of times we're just eating because we're bored or we're stressed or whatever that happens to be. So really being mindful about what we're eating and why we are. So the next one I wanted to jump into quickly is just the sleep. So we know that outside of causing us to be cranky and moody, sleep deprivation actually has some other detrimental effects, especially when it comes to learning. We know that sleep is very important before and after learning, as it helps to kind of process and consolidate that newly acquired information that's coming in. So sleep is very beneficial to us as well as our kiddos. So really kind of looking at different ways to get them some good sleep during the night. I also wanted to talk briefly on that circadian rhythm shift. We know that kids experience a biological shift in their internal clock of about 2 hours as they go through adolescence. So if you have a teenager who maybe went at 10, 11, and 12 would go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and now they naturally start falling asleep at more like at 11 o'clock or so, that's totally normal. And actually we're going through that right now with my 14-year-old. It's like, 10 or 10:30 when I'm ready to go to bed, and she's like, I'm not even tired. So know that that's normal, and that there's a couple of different tips to kind of help them hopefully navigate that. Some of the things that kind of come to mind is sticking to a consistent sleep schedule during the school week and weekends. I know this is challenging. Kids love to sleep in on the weekends when they don't have to get up, but the research does show that if you can stick to that consistent sleep schedule, it does help kind of make those night times and those early mornings a lot easier and more energy throughout the day. Getting bright light every morning is super important. I know it gets more tricky when the weather gets cold outside, but if you can get outside in the morning with your kids, or if they want to go for a walk or whatever in the morning, really helpful is kind of setting that circadian rhythm and even opening up the blinds and getting some light in the house. Naps are pretty good if needed, but only like earlier in the afternoon, just to kind of get that refresher, but in short doses if you can. And then on the other side of the daytime is just limiting that light exposure at night. So kind of turning off the lights a little bit earlier on and just kind of making it dimmer in the house, kind of getting ready for that body to shut down. And then keeping the bedroom a screen-free zone as much as possible is a big thing too. And then another piece of turning off electronics, we're going to talk a little bit about that in another few slides. But so if those kiddos are not going to bed at 11 o'clock at night, or sometimes later, I'm hearing, trying to get those screens off by like 9 or so, and just having them plug into some music or doing some drawing or some painting or whatever that looks like, but just something more creative that they don't actually have to be looking at a screen. And then the next one I just want to talk about a little bit is nature, and just looking at this picture. We know that being out in nature helps to reduce anxiety and stress. So there's studies that show that there's a decrease in heart rate, there's a decrease in the stress hormone of cortisol, lots of good things happening when we're outside. We know that it's good for creativity and focus. And another big bonus is levels of movement when we're outside tend to go up. So when we're outside, we're moving. So some of the tips that just to get kids outside maybe during the school day is potentially just going out and taking a mindful walk. I know that when I'm in my meetings all day long, if I go out for a quick lunch break, just to go outside and be like, wow, you just notice everything around you. The sky is blue. You hear the kids out. I have a school across from me, and there's some kiddos that are there and sometimes out on the playground. And so you hear everything that's going on. So just being a little bit more mindful, it's a good thing to get outside and then just come back to where you have to be on your screen again. Sitting by a window when you can look outside into nature when possible, and then just catching up on the day when you can add all these together, kind of is a connection with your students, getting outside and then getting some sort of movement is a good way to go. So as much as you can combine some of those, it's a good thing. And then I just want to talk briefly about home learning setup. It's not so much under the physical well-being part, but just wanted to mention that when kiddos are in school and they're going from class to class, they have that structure of a structured school day. And when we know that kiddos are a lot more successful when they have that kind of structure and routine. So as much as you can, really having that, whether it's in a calendar or it's in some sort of written down place of like, okay, these are the classes that I have, these are the assignments I need to turn in, this is what I'm planning on doing if I'm going to go maybe take a mindfulness break before this class because it sometimes is a little bit stressful for me, whatever that happens to be. I'm going to try to get movement before my lunch. But really kind of having that structure seems to help kiddos kind of get through that day and tends to bring a little bit more success to that. The other links that are on this page are kind of more the ergonomic setup of when you're working on a computer at home. And then the last one is kind of giving your eyes a break from being on the computer. And as all of us that are on our screens know, it kind of has a big impact on your eyes. So being able to do some of these different exercises and different things where you can give them a break. And then lastly, I just kind of wanted to talk about screen time outside of the school day. We know that living in this pandemic, we're all socializing on screens, and there's obviously some really good benefit to this. And we can't really blame teens for wanting to be on screens and be connected with their peers. But just really being intentional about screen use and talking with your students about that. So, a lot of times I think we pick up our phone just kind of as a habit of like, you're picking up your phone and sooner or later 30 minutes have gone by, you've just been scrolling for the last half an hour and you don't even realize it. So really being intentional about screen use, really what we call emotionally conscious, and does it make you feel good when you're on your phone, or if your kids are on Snapchat or on Instagram? Is it something that helps them to feel better? And if not, then maybe finding another way to kind of boost their mood and really kind of talking through that. And then a big part of that too is parents modeling healthy screen use. And I know more than probably all of you that's challenging. So just kind of thinking about what you're kind of putting out to your teens when you're on your phones and on your screens, and maybe if you can do something as a family as far as designating screen-free rooms. Like in our house, it's the kitchen. So we are not on our phones in the kitchen, and when we're at dinner time, there's no screen use or anything like that. And then there's student families that do maybe specific times of the day that are kind of screen free, or some of them do like screen free Sundays or whatever that can look like too. So those are some different things just to kind of help maybe minimize that screen use a little bit on those times when we don't have to be on it for school. And then these last slides are just a few different resources on, this first one is on just movement. A lot of these are on screens, unfortunately, but some of them you can just put on, and they're just good workout routines and different things that the kids don't necessarily have to be plugged into the screen right there. They can listen to it or whatever. And then that last one on there is just kind of getting outside as much as we can, where we're able to kind of be out there with hopefully not many people around, and wearing masks if you need to, if it's on the trails or whatever. But blessed to be in Colorado when we can go outside and be outside and moving most of the time. And then that last slide of just some additional well-being resources that are on. The first one is a link to our Student Success Team website that has some great information on well-being and mental health and social emotional learning. And then there's some links for just kind of that more calm body. There's some great sleep stories and meditations on there, and some different things of just more relaxation, which I think might be a good segue into the next couple of sessions that are coming up here. So this will get posted to the website, and please reach out if you have any questions. And thanks so much for being here again tonight. I know that this is challenging with our kids on these screens, and we so appreciate your support in helping to help them navigate this. So thank you.
Okay, Kathy, thank you so much. Again, I already have used several of her her links. The posture link, I sat in my chair different once I saw her presentation. Also the eye breaks. There's lots of good information, and probably what we'll do is have the recording, but we also will have Kathy's slide deck on there, so you can get to her links from that. Again, Kathy, thank you for putting that together and for being here with us this evening. Okay, next up, I want to introduce Sarah Moorhead and Aviva Flock, who are academic interventionists. Our school is so lucky to have these ladies, and they are so helpful to our students. So I'm going to let them take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. I'm going to go ahead and present. My name is Aviva Flock, and I will let Ms. Moorhead introduce herself while I get our screen ready.
And I am Sarah Moorhead, and together Aviva and I make up 2 of our 3-member intervention team. And our jobs in Loveland High School are essentially to make sure students have everything that they need to be supported academically.
All right, so we're going to be talking about our academic supports here. Mainly what we want to stress is that it's about learning, not stressing, and we're going to stress that. So we're going to talk about managing work time, communication, and also socializing in the online or hybrid environment. We know we have students who are doing our remote, sometimes hybrid learning. We also have students who are completely online. So we are going to do our best to address both those situations here with our slides.
So the first topic we wanted to discuss was managing work time. It was an incredibly tricky situation across the board for everybody to adjust to this pandemic setting. But number one was the time management part of it. You probably won't find a more structured place in a school, and to then be removed from that setting and kind of have to create your own schedule can be incredibly tricky. So we would encourage everybody to structure your time. You know, if you can stick to a morning routine as best as possible, that's going to be helpful. So at the beginning of each day, make a plan for yourself. Know what you are going to do, know what you need to work on. As you are going through this school day specifically, make sure you are scheduling breaks for yourself. 30 minutes is a really good rule of thumb. So after a 30-minute, if you can take a break, whether that's standing up, whether that's walking around your room, just to give yourself a break from looking at your screen and kind of let your brain readjust. It just helps your brain learn a little bit better. As you are doing your work throughout the day, we cannot encourage this enough. Really structure your time for one thing at a time. Sitting in a classroom can be easy to do that because you kind of have a guide. You have a teacher who's kind of walking you through one thing at a time. As you go through your class day, in home, it's a little different. So the more you can make a list, the more you can do one thing and then cross that off the list, the better it is for yourself. And it feels accomplished, right? I think a lot of times in this situation, there's so much going on and sometimes we don't even know where to begin. And if we can do one thing at a time, that's going to help significantly. Using a calendar, that is probably the largest thing when we're talking about how to prioritize assignments, how to know what's coming at us, how to organize our workflow and what we need to do. Every Thompson School District student has the option to use Google Calendar. And if you are an in-person student, every teacher that uses Google Classroom, it automatically will integrate into that Google Calendar. So then you really don't even have to put assignments in. When your teacher assigns something in Google Classroom, it will be there. So it's kind of that amazing tool. If your student is working through TCO, TCO creates pacing guides that are set out daily. And so that is another way that you could use that calendar to kind of keep track of the items and the tasks that need to be completed in a day. But the more you can keep track of it, the more that you can stay organized. It kind of helps bring back a routine. It brings back a structure that we all kind of lost in this situation. The next thing that we cannot stress enough is to communicate. Now more so than ever, the partnership of our education is hugely important. Students, teachers, parents, adults in the family, whomever is in charge, it's going to be imperative now more than ever that we are making sure that we are communicating, and we all want to make sure that everybody is doing the best that they can. Students, it's so important for you to speak up, whether that's in an online setting, whether you're in a remote class, ask a question, speak up in the class, put something in the chat, send an email if you are not comfortable with any of that. If your teacher attends office or has office hours, attend those. It's definitely one of those things that now more so than ever, it's incredibly difficult for teachers to pick up on if a student isn't understanding something right away. And so the more you can be upfront and ask for help right away, the better. And it is important to know that teachers are incredibly understanding at this point in time. Every single day presents something new that is unexpected, that nobody was prepared for. And so teachers are going to understand if something has happened or you're not understanding something or you weren't able to complete an assignment. Teachers will work with you, but they need to know what's happening. And so the more that you can ask, the more you can talk, the better it is for everyone. And I would also encourage parents on that end to reach out to teachers. I think sometimes we get lost in what's supposed to be happening. I have 2 children of my own that are in school, and it's like, I don't know if I should reach out. Is it okay? But I think at this point, this partnership between school and family is so important that the more we can communicate, the better. And it's just the better for our kids as well. This one I think is huge. And everybody at this point in time is struggling. We all are. And the more that we can be honest with ourselves that we are not understanding something, the better it is going to be in the long run. If we just kind of say, it's okay, I'll get to it, or it's okay, this is going to be all right, or yeah, I've got this assignment done, everything is fine, it actually will limit, and it doesn't allow other people who want to support us, because we don't know what's going on. And so I think the big thing would be to communicate with those teachers, communicate with whomever is in charge of that instruction, just so we know. Then the last one that I would talk about is your school counselor. Your school counselors are an excellent resource for support. And sometimes if you're not sure where to begin or how to start a conversation with a teacher or who to call or what to do, school counselors are an excellent resource when you're looking at the umbrella of kind of your student's academic schedule.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to talk a little bit about socializing in the online and hybrid environment. A lot of parents and students have expressed concern that kids really can't socialize when you're not going into school, if you're not participating in activities before or after school, you're not doing all of those general social things that we used to do. So how do we encourage socialization with school? Because it's very important, not just for your own mental health, but for your academic success as well. So we have a few things that can help with that. For those who are doing the TCO full online classes, there are discussion posts in those classes, and those serve as that interactive time with students, with the teacher. Put your discussion post up there, comment on other people's discussion posts. Those discussion questions are a great thing to ask your student about as well. How's the class going? What are you guys talking about? What was your last discussion post question? Could be a great way to have a conversation with your student about what's going on in school. And for those who are doing the hybrid or remote classes, make sure you're using discussion time or question and answer time in class to either speak up to your teacher, speak up with other students and have a conversation, or even use the chat box to engage in a conversation with other students. It's a great way to get to know someone else in your class, an excellent opportunity to be able to work with a student maybe outside of class time and, get them on the phone, work online together on something, and be able to have someone else in that class who you can connect with. And then on those days when you don't want to get up and go to class, you can think, hey, my friend Susie's going to be in that class. Oh, I finally know who Joe is. Maybe I can talk with him again today. So we are trying to offer as many opportunities as possible for our students to socialize, and would encourage you as parents to really encourage kids to do that as well, to get involved in those social opportunities that are being offered. And our favorite one here, our stressed out kitty cat. We just really can't tell you enough times how we are all involved in this process, and that we really are here to support. Everyone at the school is here to support the students, the families, everyone engaged in this process. And if you are not sure who to reach out to and you're stressing out because you don't know who to contact, then just reach out to one of us. Primarily, I work with the freshmen and sophomores. Primarily, Sarah works with the juniors and seniors, but that doesn't mean we don't cross over, right? If you have students that cross those ages, or you can't remember which one you're supposed to contact, it's all right. Just find one of us, and if we do not have the answer, then we will get you to the right person and make sure that you are not stressing over stressing. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much. That's super helpful. And again, like I said, we're super lucky that we have these two gals working at our school, and they support both teachers and the rest of us as we work together. I really like what you said about the partnership. It is all of us together to get through this, and we really appreciate you, ladies. Thank you. Okay, we're going to finish up this evening by introducing our counseling team to you, so you get to see everybody, and we'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell you which part of the case alphabet that we work with on our caseloads, and then we're going to have a peer counselor in Arden introduce themselves as well. And then Cindy Case is going to share an exciting opportunity for some social connection. She's also going to walk you through where on the website to connect with all of our staff and with us, and how to make appointments. Also, she's going to show you where the link is to the mental health resources. That takes you to our district student success team's list of resources. We're excited that we're going to be changing that and personalizing that with some videos, some mini videos on topics that we teach to our peer counselors, things like stress management, anxiety, grief, perfectionism. We're going to put some articles and some really good TED Talks. So it's going to be very personalized, and the link to the district website will continue to be there as well, but we want you to watch for that, and Cindy will kind of show you that in a minute. So I'm going to start off introductions. So again, I am Jill Doty. This is my 14th year at Loveland High School. I've had the first part of the alphabet all these years, and we add a letter here and there and take it away. I'm glad that I'm still here 14 years later, because I have gotten so many wonderful relationships with students, and they have taught me so much, as I said earlier after the keynote. And what's really super rewarding about being around this long is that students from Loveland High, some who are on my caseload, are now my colleagues working with me at Loveland High School, and that is really, really a rewarding thing.
And I'm Tracy Rolfe. I have the caseload of students' last names E through K. This is my first year at Loveland High School, although I've been a counselor for 18 years. So I'm really excited to be here at Loveland and be a part of this community and this counseling team. And our whole team of educators are amazing. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I am Laura Anderson, and I have students with last names L through Q on my caseload. It's my 5th year at Loveland, and it's a wonderful place to be. Both staff, students, families, been really happy. So good to see everybody.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Brett Kane. I am 1 year behind Jill in my 13th year at Loveland High School. I work with students with last names R through V, and students who are learning English as a second language as well. And I guess the one thing I want to really stress is Cindy will talk about how to make an appointment. I know it's not a normal appointment in any way, but anything that you can encourage your students to do, and the students who are in here as well, really my favorite part of each day is still working directly with students. So set up a time to see me just to check in if you need anything at all. And I think every counselor would probably say the same thing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Case. I have students with last names W through Z, as well as all students on IEPs. This is my 16th-ish year at Loveland High, but my 5th year as a counselor. So, and I'm totally with Brett. I lack social interaction, and so seeing students is the most favorite thing of my day. Glad you're all here. Thanks for coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Weitzel, and I serve the students who are in the Gifted and Talented program. This is my 13th year as a counselor. 11 of them have been at LHS with the GT students, and I just enjoy every day with my kiddos. So I echo the same thing. Please come see us. We miss you.
All right, and then hi guys, my name is Arden Farowitz, and I'm a peer counselor at Loveland High School. Within this program, we have all been trained in emotional and educational counseling to help our fellow students feel more comfortable. We are here to make our classmates feel less alone and to show them that they matter. We have been working hard on a recent project, Grief Ornaments, for those who are missing a loved one. We are here to support any students who have faced loss in their lives, especially in this season. In a few moments, Ms. Case will tell you all how to make an appointment with peer counselors. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Arden. And I have to be honest, I'm just so honored to work, to be a part of this comprehensive counseling team. So excited to be here tonight. And by the way, thank you, Veronica, for your kind words in the chat. That was a really sweet thing to say. In addition to all these wonderful supports, we really, really want you guys to know that your school counselor is a really vital player in supporting you through high school. You know, I know a lot of times it's, I need my schedule changed, I need my schedule changed, but I can assure you, we are here for so much more. We can provide academic guidance, help you with your social emotional well-being, career and college guidance, coping skills, relationship issues. We kind of like to consider ourselves the triage center, right? And so just like Aviva mentioned just a little bit ago, if you don't know who to ask, we can send you where you need to be to get the right answer, even if we don't have it. So we just want you to know that we're here. We're excited to see you every single day. And so I want to take this opportunity to just kind of show you how to connect with us. I'm going to share my screen real fast. And hopefully, Jill, can you see the website okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
This is the worst part because I am talking to my screen and I can't even see your pictures. So this is the worst part about presenting virtually. But if you haven't been here yet before, this is the Loveland High website. It has so much great information, but I'm just going to highlight a few of the things tonight. The first thing I wanted to point out was Sarah and Aviva pointed out that being in touch with your teachers is huge. They are going to be your first point of contact if you're having trouble in classes or if you have questions about your student and the grade and what's happening. And so I want you to know that right here, right dead on the front page of our website is a campus directory. So if you click on that, you're going to get a full list of every staff member in our building, along with their email and a phone number if they have one. So super, super good. If you're looking for emails for your students, teacher, or your teacher, please visit this link that sits right on the homepage. Students and let's see, students and family links here can access the counseling website, which is also full of a lot of good information about a lot of things. You'll see our Mental Health Matters event that you're at tonight is listed right on top here. And I'm going to show you real quick how to make an appointment with your counselor because we want to see you. So if you haven't seen us yet, please come talk to us. So if you click on this Make an Appointment link, you're going to get links to each individual counselor's appointment calendar. When you click on that, you're gonna come to something like this, and it's gonna show you all these little no title areas. Those are available 15-minute slots for appointments. So if you say, okay, I want to meet right at the beginning, I think, or in first period because I have the period off, I'm gonna click on that. I'm gonna fill in my name. Maybe Sally and her mom both want to come see me. It's always helpful if you can add a description. So maybe you want to talk about anxiety. Throw that in there and hit save. What happens then is it triggers an email right away to the counselor, who will then go in and create a meeting link for you, and it will automatically send you back an email so that it's confirming the appointment and a link to meet. So all you have to do is remember that you scheduled that appointment. It also, along with Google Classroom assignments and stuff that automatically go into your calendar, it also will automatically go into your calendar. So it's a really good idea, if you haven't already, to start using your Google Calendar. Let's see. All right, I'm back on the counseling page. Peer counselors are also available here on this page. Arden spoke a little bit ago. If you click on that link, they have their very own website. So this group of peer counselors this year created their own website. You can click on Meet the Peers. It gives you a little bio about the peers that are currently serving office hours. So that's kind of fun. They have a schedule a meeting link, which is what Arden was talking about just a little bit ago. If you just complete the form, the peer counselors get a notification that you're interested in meeting with them, and they will get in touch with you just as soon as possible. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the counseling website. Jill had mentioned the mental health resources, which is also here at the top of our links here. Right now, it's linked directly to the page that our social emotional learning team has created, which is awesome. There's a lot of good information in here, including a really nice list of community providers if you're looking for extra mental health support for your student. So that's a really good resource. For now, this will also be linked on our site that's under construction currently that Ms. Doty talked about. So this will also still be available, but it'll be available with a lot of other different resources for you. So just so you know, that's coming. The other thing I really wanted to plug tonight, Ms. Doty had mentioned it. We are, after listening to all the feedback from the outreach that our classified staff has done over the past week, in addition to the surveys that you guys completed, thank you for doing that, by the way. From the feedback, we really learned that isolation has really been an issue for students and families. And I'm here to tell you, it sure has been for me too. And so we wanted to find a way to get students connected with each other again in some form. And so there's an interest form if you're interested in maybe joining a before, after school, or during lunch social virtual gathering. There is a link to that interest form in our newsletter that just went out, I believe, yesterday, but you can also access it here on our home counseling website. So if you click here, there's going to be, scroll down a little bit, social connection sessions. So if you click on that, there's just a short form for students to fill out if they're interested. We just ask for some of your interests so that we can intentionally group people with those with similar interests. There's also a homework help if you're interested in maybe having a group like that in addition to your availability. And then hopefully in January, we'll be able to roll out some really cool weekly or bi-weekly groups that we can help support that lack of social interaction. So I know that's been really tough on students. I think that's all I have. There's going to be two things that come out to you following this meeting. Ms. Doty mentioned the post-event survey, I think, where you can have the opportunity to ask questions or give feedback on things that you learned or would have liked to have learned more about tonight. So you'll get a link to that. And we'll also put a link to the social connection session interest survey for you there too, just in case you have a hard time finding it. It's there. It will also be posted on our website soon. So thanks for your patience on that. I will turn it back over to Jill to wrap up. And thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that and walking us through those. Again, we want to thank everybody for being here this evening. This will all be posted on the website. So if you want to come back, or if you can tell a friend that you think it might be helpful information for them. Again, we appreciate your patience and working with us as we work through these very difficult times in education. Thank you all and have a great evening.